It's Wednesday, March 18th, 2015. I'm Jimmy Brisbeck.
And I'm Trey Comstock. Putting your final orders because this is Tech's Last Call, episode 111. Your last call for Tech News of the Week. Tonight, Jimmy buys a Pixel to surf the open internet. And I think Apple has gone one port too far. And we start tonight with Apple's Spring Forward event. I have been told... under much duress that I actually have to open this segment with talking about the Apple Watch.
That's what it was about.
Which I have been told is actually the story here. So I will attempt, in the interest of journalistic professionalism, to not bury the lead, as it were, and talk about the Apple Watch. So Apple's going to be releasing the Apple Watch. I don't know if you knew this from October, but they're going to be releasing the Apple Watch. Now, we actually have
changed their mind.
I wish they'd changed their mind about some things. So we found out some key facts. One, it has a release date. It will be available in stores and online April 24th. You can try it on in-store and pre-order it starting April 10th. Which actually I think is pretty genius, because I'm not totally sold on this thing and won't really know until I have a chance to put it on my bloody wrist. And so now I'll get to go and put it on my bloody wrist. The thing that's getting all the headlines, as well it should, is they released pricing. And the pricing is screwed, to say the least. So it does start at $350. That's $350 for a 38mm Sport.
Which is the only thing that we were told at the last announcement.
Right.
That it started at $350.
Started at $350, and we all kind of guessed, okay, that's the 38mm Sport. And then it goes bananas from there. So, the Apple Watch, not to be confused with the Apple Watch Sport, or the Apple Watch Edition, which admittedly
is the gold one.
Is the gold one, and we'll get there. That starts at $550. But they've done something, call it fascinating, call it stupid, call it whatever, in how they've priced it. So they seem to think that these bands are worth roughly the same price as myrrh. So as you spec out your Apple Watch, it starts at $550 for 38mm with the rubber sports band. $600 if you want the 42mm with the rubber sports band. Want it with a black sports band? Same price. Want it with a leather band and a classic buckle? You're up to $650 or $700. Want it with a Milanese loop? That's kind of the beautiful, Skagen-esque metal mesh? $650 or $700. You want it with another black leather band with a modern buckle? $750. Want it with a leather loop? $700. Another one modern buckle? $750. Let's see. Let's go. Brown modern buckle, $750. Here we go. Stainless steel link bracelet, $950. $900 with the 42mm. If you want it in space black, stainless steel link bracelet for the 38mm, $1,050. This is not the edition. This is still the stainless steel Apple Watch. If you want that in the 42mm variety, $1,100. Now, if you are truly a terrible person, and you look at that and go, oh, those are poverty prices, boy, do they have a deal for you. You can buy a 38mm 18-karat rose gold Apple Watch with a rubber sports band for $10,000. Want that in the 42mm with a rubber sports band? $12,000. $12,000 for a watch with a rubber sports band. Same thing if you want that in black. For the 38mm 18-karat rose gold with a very beautiful, a rose glaze modern buckle with a rose gold clasp, $17,000. You want that same watch but in black because you're, say, maybe a dude? $15,000.
I thought you were going to use a different DU.
No, if you are buying this watch, you are just a douchebag. Like that, I can't help you. That's a given. That I can't change. You're a douchebag. But I'll keep going. And the one that's going to sell in China, red leather, gold class modern buckle, 38 millimeter, 18 karat yellow gold, $17,000. Now, I get it. It's a gold watch. It's a high-end watch. It's a high-end watch that will get revved in a year. The problem I have with the Apple Watch is twofold. One, I'm not entirely sure they've justified the functionality, but time will tell with that. And I admit app makers may, part of what makes all of these phones so valuable is that app makers have done creative things with them. Right? And this whole ecosystem has bloomed, and I hate it because I think it could just run an HTML5. But either way,
Yep.
It's programs, wherever they're running, that have made the difference. My problem isn't that apps exist, it's how apps are packaged. The fact that code has unlocked multiple functionalities of these phones, I think, is what we're in this industry for. So I think, although the Apple Watch currently does not have a killer app, that isn't to say it won't. It just doesn't currently. And so I think jumping in for that price is a little troubling. The other part of it is, it's a little troubling just to jump into that price because it's going to get revved in a year. If you're
lucky, maybe 2 years.
No, it'll be rev in a year. It'll rev in a year. The battery is only designed to last 3. The battery is replaceable. I'll throw that in there. Now, Jimmy and I have spent a lot of time analyzing the Apple Watch, and we've kind of figured out that the issue isn't the watch itself.
So yeah, the watch itself, the cheapest watch itself is for the stainless steel one, the one you actually want, it's $550.
It's $550, yeah.
And for $550, you get a very good material-wise watch.
Yeah, stainless steel and sapphire.
It's priced slightly above what the Android Wear market is doing, with the LG Urbane coming in at about, I think it's $350 or $400. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Something in there, yeah.
So you're kind of looking at like a typical Apple markup for a smartwatch. The problem is that the LG Urbane has a leather watch band and is that same kind of high quality materials. And in order to get the comparable Apple Watch, you have to start adding on these bands.
And the bands are the thing that's ridiculous. So I think the sports band standalone is worth $50. Milanese loop standalone, $150. Huh?
See, are you out of your freaking mind?
No, the one where you're out of your freaking mind is
the stainless steel.
The stainless steel Link bracelet is $450 standalone.
That's
nuts.
I have watches that cost less than that.
Right, good watches.
All of them.
My
Citizen Eco Drive with a metal Link bracelet and a very clever solar powered mechanism in it from the late 2000s is. I mean, I bought it. It was listed at $300. I didn't pay that, but
right. My beautiful $180 Fossil watch with a metal Link bracelet, which is the only thing I can't wear leather watch bands anymore. I've ruined my wrist in interesting, fascinating ways. The skin on my wrist in interesting ways. So I'm left in this quandary of the value in terms of functionality doesn't seem there. Though it might get there. Look, I'm not going to write this off as a concept because, I've been doing that with the iPad for years and people keep buying the damn things. So, okay, fine. But even the one I want. So what I want is I want stainless steel and sapphire, the Apple Watch, not the Sport, with the Milanese loop. But even that's what, $650, $700? So
the Sport? Or the Apple Watch?
Apple Watch.
Yeah, it's like $650.
So what I'll really probably do, if I'm going to pull the trigger on this at all, and I haven't totally decided yet, is I'll get an Apple, and as far as I can tell, my plan works. I can't find anyone that will tell me that the bands won't work across the lines. So we're just going to assume that they do. And if they don't, screw you. So I'm going to get an Apple Watch Sport for $350 in silver. And then I'm going to buy a Milanese loop. Take the sports band off because I'm an adult and not a weird sporting one. I'm not going to wear a rubber band to work. and I'm going to put the Milanese loop on there, and then I'll be vaguely happy. But I still think that these bands are just and Apple's always had bad accessory pricing. You know, I have so many of these $20 dongles. Like, I just have a clutch of 20. Why were all of these $20? I mean, I'm holding 80 here in my hands. I'm holding $100 in dongles, more than $100 in dongles.
No, they're probably each individually at least $40.
No, they were each $20. I remember specifically. So all of these were. Why are these $20? Who knows? They're confetti now. I was banging them around so the audio listeners could hear the dongles. Dongle.
Dongle.
So the iPad cases are too expensive. We've known this. I mean, all of these things are too expensive, but they weren't essential. You didn't have to have a dongle for your MacBook. You didn't have to buy an iPad case. If you chose to, fine. Watches need bands, I've been told.
So the other interesting thing about this is, and it's something that we commented on about the Apple or about the Android Wear watches at Mobile World Congress, and also the Pebble Time. So with both the Pebble Time and all of the Android Wear watches, they're going to the 22 millimeter standard watch bands, basically saying, we're not in the business of making these accessories. We don't want to limit you on what accessories you can get. Just we're all about the smarts in the thing. You figure out the accessories for yourself, which is the way that watches have worked for a very long time. Is that most watches are compatible with standard watch bands.
Except for Mickey Mouse watches, as I found out this week.
That's actually hilarious.
I was getting the watch band replaced on I have a cool Mickey Mouse Star Wars watch, where it's Mickey carrying Yoda in a backpack. It's a cool
that's
watch.
Pretty cool.
Limited edition of 500. Anyways.
Yeah, so the point is that when they were showing off the Apple Watch back in October, one of the things that a lot of people pointed out was the fact that, they come up with this new way to do watch bands. Well, of course, the new way to do watch bands means you have to buy the stupid watch bands from them.
Right. And that, as far as I can tell, is what's jacking up this price to ridiculous. Right?
Because if I could buy a standard leather watch band for $40 and put it on an Apple Watch, the 38 millimeter 550. Actually, so the way that this prices out is the actual 38 millimeter Apple Watch is $500.
$500
without
which
a band.
Itself is too much.
Without a band.
Now let's be clear. That's still too much.
But it's not as ridiculous as the $700 you would have to pay for an Apple Watch with a leather band,
or the $650 with a Milanese loop, or the $1,100 for a space black 42 millimeter metal link bracelet. It's unreasonable.
I can't find anything in here that tells me why this this classic leather band is $150. It's from the renowned Eco Tannery in the Netherlands. The Dutch leather used for this band is milled to give the grain a subtle, distinctive texture. The simple closure is crafted from the same stainless steel as the case. It is a beautiful take on a traditional band design. Yeah, it's also $150.
Why do I feel that the copywriter was really turned on when they wrote that?
It was Johnny Ives, so yes. Johnny, tell us what you think about the black classic buckle band.
It's unabashedly plastic.
Its simple closure is crafted from the same stainless steel as the
I'm getting really uncomfortable, Johnny.
Which sounds really fancy, but guess what? Most stainless steel is basically the same. There's very little difference in stainless steel.
But for that price, it should be made of myrrh. That's the problem. It's on what planet is a smartwatch, unproven technology, worth $1,100? And that's a mainstream one. We're not even talking about the edition. Again,
you shouldn't even think about the edition.
Don't even think that hard about the edition. It's like the Androgel. Just don't think too hard about Androgel. It causes so many birth defects. Just don't think too hard about it, or you might also result in birth defects. Anyways, what was the genius of the original iPad was we were all kind of, when we hear the iPad rumors, we're like, oh, it's going to be $800. It's going to be $800.
No, $1,000.
$800, $1,000. They came in at $500 and we all went, I'm buying it now. That's the right. We all looked at each other and went, that is the right price. It's not zero monies. I mean, that was real monies. But we all looked at that price and went, wow, they killed it. That's what I remember thinking when that price got announced. That's what sold me on the iPad, was this looked like the right device for at least for what I thought I wanted at the time. I was wrong, but I didn't know that, and I wasn't going to figure that out until I tried it. But it was at the right price. They've always worked very hard with carriers to make sure the iPhones are the right price.
Right. If you're paying
for the
full
consumer
price,
facing price.
Yeah, if you're paying full price for an iPhone, especially in the United States, and this is more obviously this is geared at U.S. consumers and international
U.S. and
consumers.
Chinese is where, why else
Right.
do you have a red and yellow gold? This is aimed also at the Chinese market, heavily
Yeah.
at the Chinese market.
But the fact that the American market does not see the full price of an iPhone, when I say something like, oh, I'm going to spend $650 for a Samsung Galaxy S6, people look at me like I'm out of my damn mind. And then I look at them and say, do you know how much an iPhone costs off contract? Usually it's people with iPhones.
Right. And I spent $450 on contract for an iPhone 6 Plus, but this is like close to the top of the line 6 Plus. It was the 64 gig.
And also that's more adequately compared to the Note 4.
Right. Anyway, I bought a ridiculous phone. I know. But I use those every day. I can start to justify this. And look, I'm about to drop $2,700 on either a laptop or a desktop with Apple, right? I'm 4 years into the lifespan of this MacBook Pro. It's now requiring more regular maintenance than I'm really willing to deal with it, and it's time to move on. And so I'm either going to get a new MacBook Pro or a refurbished Mac Pro for about that $2,700 price range. But I get 4 years worth of use. Very hard use. I'm not one of those people who babies my MacBook Pro and really only uses it for light web browsing. Nah, it's like, compiling an entire 50-minute documentary in 36 hours while we're both on drugs. Like, that's the life that I put my laptops through, and they tend to live a 4-year lifespan. I've had 2 Apple laptops in a row that I've put through hell. Actually, both of them edited documentaries in foreign countries and come back fine. That's what's still recording this show. It's a 4-year-old MacBook Pro. So I feel like I get a lot of value for money, even though I'm paying a lot in. And some of what I'm paying is I'm paying for warranties. It's a $3,100 laptop with the warranties, but I use the crap out of those warranties.
Oh yeah, they're worth it. Those warranties are worth it if you're going to be doing anything other than light web browsing on your couch.
I got a whole new screen
warranties
for free. Okay, whole new screen, no money. They made me pay. They made me pay for the trackpad that I broke. They broke anyway. That's personal.
You're still a little bitter about
Still
this.
a little bit. It was only $50. Like, they actually took really good. I've always had really good experiences. The Genius Bar. They've taken. It's one of the reasons I stay with Apple. Is they've always taken. I break things all the time. They've taken really good care of me. The value proposition with the Apple Watch, because of the bands specifically and even generally, is just so out of whack. So out of whack. I'm not going to sit here and predict that they missed, because I get the sense this launch is going to be big. I do.
It's going to be a big launch, but I wonder. So they've got the mind share on the wearable market right now, especially.
They've reclaimed it. I mean, they lost it for a week.
Yeah, they did
because of the Urbane and the Huawei.
However, I think that if the thing does not kill it that first couple of weeks, then Google's going to get to say whatever they want at I/O.
Right.
And that's when, around Google I/O is when we're expecting to really see the Urbane and the Huawei starting to... The Huawei Let's is going to be later this year, but the Urbane is definitely going to come out kind of summertime.
Yeah.
And so they have like a real competitor that they're going to have to deal with as far as doing interesting things that are very good looking.
But I get the sense that they think they're playing a different game. Oh, this is a luxury watch. It has the sapphire crystal and stainless steel, and it comes in gold. And I get it. And luxury watches are big, and Rolex can charge 3 to 10 grand for a watch. But if that's your price point comparison, I don't want to be friends with you, because what is wrong in your mind? And still, those are heirloom pieces. You spend 3 grand on a Rolex, it retains some of that value, and you pass it down to your heirs. You go, this is my great grandfather's Rolex. Isn't this cool? What is it? No one's going to be inheriting your Apple Watch edition. The software will be deprecated in 2.5 years. Like clockwork. And then where are you? You have bought a $17,000 hockey puck. It's about, you could use it.
A little small. It's a little small for a hockey puck.
A little small. But it is made of gold. So there is that. You could melt it down and turn it into a gold medal. You could trade into scrap at a pawn shop. You could end up on an episode of Pawn Stars. Like, these are your options after about 2 or 3 years.
Pawn Stars is really where you're looking for.
So speaking of Pawn Stars, in the things that I think should be sold down the river, the actual story I'm interested in. We just did 21 minutes in the story I don't care about. This is the story I care about. The new MacBook. So we kind of got the sense there was going to be a one more thing. And the one more thing actually came first. But anyways, Apple announced a new laptop. They've brought back the MacBook name. And they've created that kind of form factor laptop that we were expecting. The kind of 13-inch laptop screen and a 11-inch laptop body with a full-size keyboard that they kind of ruined by having very low throw and a fancy touchscreen that's force touch. Trackpad. Not a touchscreen. It should have had a touchscreen. That's part of my problem. Trackpad thing that has force touch, which got rid of the click and now has like haptics. I'm skeptical, but I'll have to try it.
It's using the same engine that's in the Apple Watch.
The Taptic engine.
Which I still think is a really stupid name.
The Taptic engine.
I'm not going to say it.
Taptic engine. It's running
you still sound like a douche.
Yep. It's running a Pentium M processor, so super low power. But it still only gets 9 hours of battery life, even though, and they show this in the presentation, it's like a really small motherboard, a really small control board for the mouse, and then filled with batteries.
And it's like the batteries are like layered.
Yeah, they're layered. So they're terraced. So they fit better in the case.
Yeah.
It comes in space gray, silver, or gold.
Stop me if you've heard this before.
Stop me if you've heard this before. And it kind of looks a little more iPad-ish in its design. And now let me get, and that's all well and good. It seems like it doesn't get the battery life for having such a low energy processor, but Apple tends to actually hit their battery life numbers, whereas the Windows manufacturers tend to lie about their battery life numbers. So you can
They use creative numbering.
Right. So if you see 9 hours on a MacBook battery, you can pretty well guarantee you're going to get close to that because Apple doesn't lie about that. I'll give them credit. They don't lie about that. So here's the thing. Apple, I'll put the good spin on this story for a second. Apple is embracing a standard. I know. Apple is embracing a standard. USB-C. You would think, oh, Trey, they have Thunderbolt. They're really into that.
I like standards.
I like standards. They're using a USB-C. And there's an interesting fact about USB-C. You can push up to 100 watts across USB-C. Apple looked at this and goes, and just like other manufacturers have, we can replace the need for a charging port. We can just use the USB-C port. And so they saw that. And how many USB-C ports did they include? 2, you would think, right?
Of course.
One to use something.
One on each side, right?
One on each side.
Like a normal person.
One port.
One port.
One port.
You got to be out of your damn mind. One
port. One port for charging. One that is also
only one port.
Only one port. That's your charging. That's your data in. Oh no, excuse me, 2 ports. There's a headphones jack. They do sell headphones.
They're a headphones company now too. Don't forget, they have Beats.
They own Beats. One port. One port. They will sell you an $80 dongle. Stop me if you've heard this before. That will give you more than one port for charging and for data across and for hooking up a monitor and for.
It has 3. So you plug in the USB-C and it has 3 ports in it. Another USB-C port
for charging.
a USB 2.0 port
to use for anything else,
to use for normal people things, and then I think an HDMI port.
to use a monitor or a
Or is it?
television.
Wait, no. Please tell me that it's a display port,
Yeah.
so that I can get my, USB-C to display port to HDMI.
Yeah. One port.
One port.
So in 1984, Apple introduced the original Macintosh, which was a computer without interchangeable boards, which was unheard of. And now all laptops are like that, but that was unheard of at the time and really limited its functionality. In 1997-98, they released the original iMac without a floppy disk drive. So that box had no way of writing to external storage unless you hooked in an external floppy disk drive.
Which is what we did.
This is the furthest extent of this. This is too far. You have to use a dongle if you want to both be able to use a USB thumb drive, which, by the way, is still very common, and charge it. Now, I get that they're talking about,
they're like the first USB 3 or USB Type-C device out there.
Yeah.
When this was announced, there were things shown at CES, but nothing that's actually being released.
But it's
has come out.
It's a coming
It's gonna
standard.
by the end of the year. It'll be on all the new laptops.
They're like, oh, you can push the data across Bluetooth in the cloud. I mean, yes and no. All of those services work great in very specific context. Now,
college students,
which is the main market for this laptop. No, I get that. I mean, I sit in lecture halls and I look out at a sea of MacBooks. But Apple is really good at this is the world we want to see. But this one, just like the original iMac especially, is not in the world we live now. It's too far outside it. Jeff Green in Computer Gaming World had this editorial about...
When was this?
It was just like 98. Talking about the original iMac. Where his review of the original iMac for gaming ended with, you pick the thing up and you throw it out the window. And his main complaint was that it didn't have a bloody floppy drive. Because how do you write external data? USB... This is too far. One port. This is Apple. I get the world you're going towards, and I would love to live in that world because I am, just as I'm surrounded by dongles, I'm surrounded by hard drives, right? There's one. I carry around, that was dumb. There's important data on those drives. I carry around 2 different flash drives. I have USB hard drives and external storage.
I got
everywhere.
you. I don't think I can get this quite in the shot. I got you one better. Can you see that?
Yep.
4-port USB hub.
Right. I mean, I get it.
It was a freebie from Toshiba.
I would love to not be in this situation. And I also get that I'm a media professional, and so this is obviously not the laptop for me. Although they revved the 13-inch Pro
13-inch.
And didn't rev the 15-inch Pro, and that's concerning to me.
Or maybe that's because, they gave the 13-inch Pro the Force Touch.
Yeah, but they gave it the faster RAM, too. I don't care about Force Touch.
Well,
what I want is that RAM. I want that 1866 RAM. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Also, I want the new generation of processors, which currently hasn't come to the 15-inch Pros yet. And I'm about to buy a 15-inch Pro, potentially. I would really like them to rev it, because I want to be able to buy that soon.
Oh, so I got an answer for you on what the dongle display out you can get. You can get VGA for the teachers.
Yeah,
because teachers are the only people that still use VGA.
It's Emory too. College students.
And HDMI. So you have 2 choices, but if you for some reason need to use VGA for your professional life and HDMI for your home life, you either need to invest in a HDMI to VGA
That's
dongle.
not a good converter.
Or you need to buy 2 of these things
for $160.
Did you hit the price? I don't remember. It's $1,300.
$1,300.
So The price is right in that sweet spot for what the MacBook Pro, the legacy one that they've been keeping, the one that still had the disk drive in it,
Right.
that they've been keeping around. So what they've finally done is they have pushed what they started with the 15-inch Pro, they pushed to the 13-inch Retina Pro. They've now pushed it to just the MacBook for normal people. So they can unify kind of their design language from 15-inch MacBook Pro to Mac Pro or MacBook, and then MacBook looks very similar to iPad, and then connects it to the rest of the mobile line.
But this also is what I don't understand is now what's the purpose of the MacBook Air line?
Budget line.
So which is really funny.
Yeah,
so
the
this
MacBook
is now
Air,
their top end Ultrabook, because it's also like a Retina screen, and this is on some levels.
they're gonna have to cut the price of the MacBook Airs down because the MacBook Air is not as good.
Right, but it starts at a lot cheaper.
Well, right, for the 11-inch, but the 13-inch starts right in the same spot.
Yeah, but I don't think I think the 13-inch is now basically deprecated.
Unless they can make an argument of processors.
Well, right,
Or
because those
battery
have
life.
Core series, and these have M series, so they're
So-
pretty low power.
So here's an interesting factoid for you. From CES, we talked about the Lenovo Levie laptops, which is very much in the same kind of form factor conversation. And those laptops, the 13-inch weighs 1.7 pounds. This weighs 2.1.
Yeah.
Has a core. You can get up to a Core i7 processor in it.
Jeez.
Broadwell, and you get standard 128 gigs of SSD. And it'll do like the yoga trick, and it has a touch screen.
Which this
and,
device should.
and it gets like 6 or 7 hours of battery life. So like it doesn't get quite as good a battery life, but it's also almost half a pound lighter and has a real processor.
Right.
And a touchscreen.
And a touchscreen. So my big problem with this device, besides the one port, which is a big problem, is its lack of a touchscreen. This was their chance to finally release something, a modern laptop, a modern Ultrabook. A modern Ultrabook needs a touchscreen.
Well, the other thing is that the V one I was talking about, it has two USB 3.0 ports, not USB-C, an SD card reader, and an HDMI port included in the body, as well as a separate standard Lenovo charging port.
Yes, Jimmy, but it's less likely to end up in the Museum of Modern Art. Like this is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Look,
This is-
yes, I get that you've created a laptop design that's so seamless. So seamless it's bloody useless.
You lost the point.
Like they were finally putting HDMI ports and card readers on their devices. Jimmy, we had hit something. We
were
say, they'd
almost
never
there.
put a card reader, and they did. Oh, they'd never use HDMI. They're so into and then they did, and now it's one port. One port. So something to transition off of this, because I could literally and have literally talked about this for hours.
Literally just one port over and over and over
I
again.
was just screaming one port.
In case anyone was curious.
I was literally screaming. I got off the plane from Brazil and then was in the car driving and was screaming into my car stereo at Jimmy, one port, like just
With Sydney in the background going, I was wondering how long it was going to take you to get around to that.
one port. So something I'm in no way disappointed in, I'm actually fascinated by, is HBO Now. So we kind of thought this was going to get announced at the Apple thing. It did get announced at the Apple thing. So HBO is a new streaming service that's basically HBO Go, but you don't need HBO via your cable subscription. You can just pay them $15 a month and get this online only version of HBO Go called HBO Now.
That's the right price.
And it has all of the shows you want. Game of Thrones, Silicon Valley, Last Week Tonight. Those are the shows I want.
It has all of the shows that on HBO currently, correct?
Yeah, it's like 2,000 shows. Some movies as well. It's going to get the new shows, and it's going to launch in conjunction with Game of Thrones and the new season of Silicon Valley. And it's an Apple product exclusive for 3 months, which is, by the way, the run of Silicon Valley and Game of Thrones.
So Apple did something brilliant.
That's bloody brilliant. Now, I use these devices, and so I'm kind of going, hey, I mean, I like Silicon Valley. I'm in love with Last Week Tonight. I have lots of Apple devices. I would get some use out of this. Maybe it's worth $15 a month.
Well, and then they also announced that the actual Apple TV box is dropping from $100 to $70,
which is still a little too expensive, but they've been selling fine at $70.
Yeah, but when you talk about the fact that it is a device that its whole purpose is to serve you Apple services, it's the right price to get the $15. Someone would go, I really want to watch Game of Thrones, but I don't have HBO. They would totally go buy a box, and pay $15 a month,
right,
to get HBO.
Right. I think Apple has a lot of money, and they threw some money around in a meaningful way. This is what you can do when you're the biggest gorilla in the room. You can say, "Hey HBO, how much would it cost for your service to be exclusive with us for 3 months?"
HBO named a price. Apple said,
"Let me write you a check." Tim Cook pulled out what I presume is a giant checkbook.
No, I was just imagining a large wad of bills going, how'd you like that? All right.
No, Tim Cook and Louis, do you take Apple Pay?
Here, I have my watch.
He just tapped his watch against the forehead of the CEO of HBO, and the deal was done. That's how this works, right? It's just ticking. Ticking. And you know Tim Cook has an Apple Watch edition. You just know he does. And I don't think Tim Cook's a douchebag. Quite the opposite.
He has more than one, probably. He probably has a red one for when he goes to China.
But he probably has the nice the beautiful. I mean, the rose gold one is admittedly beautiful. With that light pink band. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I hate this product. It patently hate it. But I look in that and go, yes. I don't want it, but it is. I would love to see that in person someday because I think it's beautiful. The colors are just what they can do. What they're doing with rose gold, and the rose gold carries in the buckle. Man,
I like the modern buckle. I do think that that's a clever.
I don't think these things are bad looking. I just think they're the wrong price.
Right.
Something else that I think is just the wrong price.
That's always been the wrong price.
This is almost worse than one port because this is the world's most expensive browser. Go, Jimmy. Tell me about the world's most expensive internet browser. This thing does the same thing as, that stupid connected internet hub I have in my kitchen from the late 90s.
Yep.
So the Ergo Audrey.
A new laptop from not only Apple, but also from Google.
Google's Ergo Audrey.
Literally the next day. So Google announced the second iteration of its Chromebook Pixel laptop.
Oh,
God. So, yeah, for those of you that don't remember the Chromebook Pixel. Is this one
still 4x3?
Yeah, it is still 4x3. So for those of you that don't remember it, we don't blame you. It was 2 years ago, and it never really made much of a splash. It paired high-end hardware with Google's Chrome OS to deliver kind of a reference device for developers. That's all.
80% of them were sold to Google employees.
Yep. So Google kept almost exactly the same form factor for the device, and it has this very solid, like, slab of aluminum feel. When it's closed, it has no real discernible branding on the outside. It has this one little light bar that you can tap to see what the battery level is. That's kind of cool. But it weighs 3.3 pounds. It has a high resolution touchscreen, 2560 by 1700. There's that 4x3. It also uses the USB Type-C connector that Apple is using for its new MacBook, except Google is providing not one, but two of the USB Type-C
ports.
They
made a big point of that in the press release.
Yeah, one on each side. So to quote the press release, quote, "The new Pixel doesn't just have one Type-C port, it has two, one on each side, so you can plug in wherever is convenient," end quote.
I mean, it looks good. I'll give it this.
It's always been a good looking device.
It is, and 12 hours of battery life. Uh-huh. But Jimmy,
here, let me keep going. I'll get to your question. I know what your question is. I'll get there. So other things they did, they bumped to the newest i5 chipset, um, gave it 8 gigs of RAM. There will be two versions sold at this time. This is probably the funniest thing. The base model is selling at $999, and there will be an LS version. By the way, LS is not luxury sport. It is ludicrous speed.
Really?
That's literally what they said. And it will sell for $1,300, which was the price. That's the price of the original
Chromebook. The
Chromebook.
stupid MacBook.
So if you'd like to pick up one of these devices, you'll need to check out Google's new web store called Google Store, which they also announced as part of this press release. So basically, Google spun the devices part of its Google Play store out into a separate platform where you can buy Chromebooks, Nexus devices, as well as Nest and Dropcam. Right now, they only have the Nest, but I assume that Dropcam is going to get there. Biggest difference I can see between like the Google Store and the old devices section of the Google Play Store is you get free shipping, which was something that wasn't offered on the Google Play Store, which I always thought was really dumb. So like when I bought my my Nexus 9, I had to pay shipping on it. Or I would have had to pay shipping on it. When I bought my Nexus 5, I did pay shipping on it. I was like, this is really stupid. Why can't I just get free shipping? I'm paying you guys $400 for this device.
So on the Google Web Store, where I can buy this thing for $999, it shows a man with a very large beard in what appears to be some sort of design workshop holding a Chromebook Pixel, which I can only assume someone else left there because there's no way it's his laptop. Because what design work is he doing with a functional $1,000 Core i5 web browser?
Yes, but he has a very large beard.
Oh, and nicely coiffed and gelled hair. I mean,
he's definitely the design professional look.
Yes,
the hipster design professional specifically.
Yes, I understand this look. I don't coif my hair, and my beard doesn't do that. But if it did, it would, right?
So what do you think about Google?
This thing is the stupidest thing on the planet. This is almost dumber than one port. Like this.
Okay, so what? Let me defend Google's position here. First off,
yep,
it's the wrong price.
Yeah, no, you don't say. By about the factor of 2.
Yeah. Okay. So what? I'm not sure that the world needs a new Chromebook Pixel.
Really?
The original Chromebook Pixel made the point, and Google's thing about the original Chromebook Pixel was this is a reference hardware. This is not intended for normal people. This is really just to kind of show what you can do if you have a full power device as a Chromebook.
And guess what? That proved.
They still stayed under $500. Yeah, but it showed off some of the newer ideas that you could like here you have this high-end hardware and you can still run Chrome OS on it and it still works great. Chrome OS though has come a long way since the original Chromebook Pixel. So when the original Pixel came out, and this is from Molly Wood's article over at nytimes.com. When the original Pixel came out, it was literally just a Chrome web browser was what Chrome OS was. Now it's kind of moved closer to being Linux, where
it always was Linux.
Well, yeah, but as far as visually, you still have menus that you can understand as a Windows or Mac user. You have some kind of file structure to store things on.
File system. To be fair, iOS still doesn't have a file system, so
right. Android barely has a file system that you can get into.
I mean, I actually now have a desktop program that hacks into the iPhone file system because sometimes I need to move very big videos off, but that's immaterial.
But basically, so the Chrome OS has come far enough that it can probably be literally the same device as what the MacBook is shooting at, which is that low power computing where all you're really doing is web browsing and word processing. If you're doing those two things, Chrome OS is enough. If you need to do anything other than that,
literally anything
other than that. Now, that being said, there are a lot of HTML5 photo editors that don't suck.
What about audio editors?
Trey, Normal people don't
No,
edit
no, 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 no,
audio.
no, 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 no. Audio edit. I'm not talking about video editing. Okay, like
Normal people don't edit audio.
But on a Core so I have every day, I use an 8 gig of RAM Core i5, beautiful modern device. It was our device of the year last year. It's the thing I really like using, the Surface Pro 3.
Well, the answer is you should just buy a Surface Pro 3 instead
yes.
of either of these things.
Instead of either of these things, you should just buy the Surface Pro 3, or at this point, wait for the Surface Pro 4. That's the answer
Which
to
will have a USB Type-C connector most likely for its power.
Fine. Yeah. But it probably will include a sane USB port.
Well, it'll probably be a similar form factor until going to USB Type-C, which I think is a more interesting story about both of these devices.
Using USB Type-C. But let me get back to my point here.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, finish.
And so I'm able to do a certain amount of Photoshop work on it. Mm-hmm. I'm able to run Audacity easily, and do a ton of audio editing on it, because it just happens to be the thing I have with me a ton. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to install Premiere because I'm not crazy, but that's a really full-powered laptop that should be able to run, that in theory can run 80% of the Adobe Creative Suite. And so if I was to buy a MacBook, which I'm not, but if I was to, I could run, it's Pentium M, or Core M, so maybe not. But theoretically,
it could theoretically run, but it probably wouldn't run very well, and you'd hate your life.
Right. So in some ways, what I want is I want the processor from this thing, and I want them to switch processors. Because I think put the Pentium M was early 2000s.
No, they actually still have Pentium M.
Oh, Jesus.
They revived the branding.
Okay, that's what's confusing me. You put the Core M in this thing because it's stupid and pointless. And you put the Core i5 over in the MacBook where it belongs, and that thing at least becomes a usable, photo editor and stuff. The app, maybe I just don't know Chrome OS well enough, but my sense of it is the app support, which we mock Windows Phone for, just isn't there for something that has this much power.
Right. So this thing has too much power for what it's trying to do, and it's too expensive for what it's trying to do. All the people that have Chromebooks that I've talked to really like them, and rarely run into that problem because the majority of humanity doesn't do what you and I do with computers.
Yeah, it turns out I've come around on Chromebooks. This is very hard for me to admit, but I've come around on Chromebooks.
It's because they're super cheap.
Well, yeah,
it's like, okay, I get good laptop hardware for $300.
And it does what actual humans, I get that what actual humans do with computers could almost be solved by an iPad.
Almost.
But a Chromebook meets 90% of your needs, whereas the iPad or the Nexus or whatever meets 80% of your needs. And so I don't hate them anymore. I didn't hate netbooks. I bought a bloody netbook. And these are better netbooks. So, okay.
So if we get down to the point of this thing, they revved it probably because Sergey or Larry wanted a new one. It's Google. They just kind of do things because they feel like it.
And this will be their, the laptop they push out to their 80,000 employees, and so they'll sell 100,000 of these things.
Right.
Leo Laporte bought one.
Well, and the other thing is that you look at the Chromebook Pixel as a Lenovo or an HP and things like that. And we talk about in cell phones how you need a hero phone. The Chromebook Pixel is the hero Chromebook.
The i7 is currently out of stock.
Wow. So there must be something that you can do on a Chromebook that you and I are not familiar with that you can use that processor for. Because
coding.
It's not
right. And this is what all
coding, is that what you said?
Coding, yeah.
Well, the other thing is, I assume that you can
code.
strip the OS off of it and put Linux on it.
Yes.
And then use it as a really high-powered Linux box.
Sure. Yeah.
Which if you're a coder,
it's perfect.
And arguably the target audience for this thing, you would do something like that. Mm-hmm. Take this really awesome hardware and strip it out. Strip out the software.
Yeah,
so
I
don't really
I'll give him
understand.
that.
It's beautiful. It's too heavy. It's too expensive. but it's a beautiful device, and they did not change it very much from the previous version.
So speaking of beautiful, what happened with the FCC?
400 pages is not beautiful, Trey. That's a lot of reading.
Sometimes, look, dude, don't talk to me about a lot of reading.
Yeah. So after much
You don't know what it's like, man. You weren't there.
After much public urging, the FCC...
I have grad school PTSD.
Yeah. A little too much grad school for Trey.
Too much grad school. The papers, man. The papers.
So after much public urging, the FCC released the full text of its new regulations regarding ISPs and net neutrality this past week, amounting to almost 400 pages, including almost 80 pages of dissenting opinions from the two Republicans.
Which those you can skim over, as these people are wrong.
The document lines out exactly how the Title II regulations will be applied to broadband carriers. It seems to lay out very closely what the short version said in a couple. Let me try that again. Lay out in a short version. It says almost exactly what the short version said 2 weeks ago. So, there will be three things that will be prevented by this regulation: blocking, throttling, and paid prioritization on the internet. Also, the FCC is attempting to apply a, quote, light touch to the regulation by forbearing any price setting, including, quote, no unbundling of last mile facilities, no tariffing, no rate regulation, and no cost accounting rules, as well as no additional, end quote, as well as no additional federal taxes and fees.
Wow.
So they've also now, and state taxes and fees are already limited by Congress on the internet. So they've also defined the internet as more than an information service, but instead as a, quote, edge service, end quote. And that is how everyday people access the greater telecommunications network that is the internet, which is how the court advised them to approach it in the Verizon case last year. So the quote that comes out of the paper or out of the report is, quote, we revisit the commission's classification of the retail broadband internet access service as an information service and clarify that this service encompasses the so-called edge service. There's a lot of other interesting tidbits in the full regulatory language, but I guess my question is, who do we think is going to sue first?
Comcast. No, not Comcast. It can't be Comcast because they've got two things that they've got to deal with. They're under rules like this anyways because of the NBC acquisition, and they're trying to get the Time Warner thing through. So the mobile carriers. I'm betting on Verizon, maybe AT&T.
I'm thinking Verizon or AT&T is probably. It's probably going to be AT&T. Verizon is going to go, look, man, we did it last time. It's your turn.
Yeah, it's your turn. It is AT&T's turn. I think we can all understand that. Yeah.
Well, also AT&T has both, like Verizon, except AT&T's network is larger. They have both landline and wireless services. Mm-hmm. So they will be affected on two fronts in a way that Comcast will not be.
Yes. But I think the reality is I think at some point they're all going to sue. Or this is going to blow up in their face. But
I think that someone's going to sue, but it's the AT&T will sue, but will have the backing of all of the organizations. Right.
So there's some trade group I don't know about will sue.
Right. We had discussed about the forbearing. They're not stepping back on that, forbearing the price setting. I read through kind of the high points of the dissenting opinions, and basically one of the Republicans said the free and open internet. Well, what did he say? That the gist of it was that we can look at everything that the internet has become and say, oh, well, that's been because there's been no regulations on the internet. And so that's why it's been able to grow. And so we're adding undue regulations on the internet. And that's what's causing it. We're going to stop internet, proliferation and growth. And I was just like, You don't understand how the internet works, do you?
Some days I want to ask you, do you understand the words that are coming out your mouth?
Because the FCC has kind of always had that since, well, at least not always, but since 2005, the FCC has been taking a stance on this net neutrality thing about like, hey, no, you can't do that paid prioritization nonsense. You can't throttle people just because, you think that they're using too much because they're making your network not work so good. Why don't you try something different? Why don't you make your network better?
Hey guys, have you ever thought about improving your network? I mean, I get improving your network is very expensive, but I pay these people a lot of money. Like, a lot of money. I pay more than $500 a month in telecommunications related bills. $500. That's a lot of money. With my $500 and other people's presumably less than that, they should be able to give us a functional service.
Well, the other thing is, and I think the telecommunications network argument is becoming more and more valid as time goes on, because look at the number of services that are VoIP services that the consumer has no idea are VoIP services, or has like literally you plug a thing in and you're using VoIP and you don't even know it. For example, the Link phones that we use are, will soon be Skype for Business phones that we use at my office. It's all VoIP. So when our internet went down last week, we had no phones.
I mean, it's the same thing with like if you have Comcast home phone. As far as I understand, that's voice over IP.
Yeah, I believe it is as well.
Kind of a weird, different way, but it's still voice over IP.
Oh, well, that's how Fios works in DC. My parents have Fios.
What's how any of these like bundled, unless you're bundling it with your DSL line?
Well, so AT&T's bundle works slightly differently. They can provide you the telephone and the wireless, but they actually partner, I think, with other people to deliver the UVerse cable. They don't actually own a cable company.
Right.
They're in this. They're in a weird. I still don't quite understand how UVerse works. Like actually works in the back end. I know AT&T sells me a bundle. I don't know anything other than that, and that they make a bundle.
They make a bundle. Well, it's theoretically UVerse is their version of Fios, so it's fiber to the home. Because I can now get you again. Now that I'm moving, I have access to all the services I wanted in the first place. I'm about to get Google Fiber. I have
no.
Fiber.
So the UVerse you're talking about is fiber, but UVerse has existed using traditional cable lines, but they can't push the same level of data that Comcast can.
Fascinating.
So the data that you and I are using is one tier above AT&T's max. So I was like, oh yeah, I can go up to the max data that AT&T provides. It's like, oh yeah, how much is that? 25 megabit per second. I went, you realize I have 50, right? Like, they're like, oh, really? I didn't know that existed.
Oh, it exists.
It exists. Sometimes I wish I had more.
Also, my cat is snoring in the background. I can the cat is snoring. Okay. Fascinating.
So net neutrality is just kind of what we thought it was.
And so is the CIA. So Snowden strikes again. This time, the leaked documents... This is really distracting. That's better.
Problem solved.
I woke the cat up. Now he's being adorable. This is really distracting.
Wait till he flips himself over. I'm just going to watch the cat. You go.
Yeah. This time, I'm talking about Snowden news, and all I can think of it is the cat. This time, the leaked documents to The Intercept has it that the CIA sponsored researchers at Lockheed Martin's Sandia National Laboratory to attempt to compromise the security of Apple's iDevices by targeting their encryption mechanisms, and they created a hacked version of Xcode, Apple's developer environment. As often happens with this, the details are kind of sparse. We don't know how they intended to distribute this hacked version of Xcode that would be able to let them bundle in whatever software they wanted, or how successful they were at breaking Apple's encryption, which might make it sound like this isn't much news. Of course, they're trying everything, but we keep doing these stories because, first of all, the CIA was doing this for like 2 years, from 2010 to 2012. This was not a small program. Also, I want to keep covering these stories because I don't want the facts that Snowden is revealing to fade into the background. I think on some level we have a journalistic responsibility to keep this conversation going. It's just another Snowden revelation. These are all major things, and so I want us to periodically.
Well, there's a reason why he is spacing them out, because they are all major things, and he doesn't want the less major things to get lost in the shuffle.
Right. So this particular story is important because it shows the direct targeting of a U.S. company. This isn't Apple handing over the keys to the castle. This is quite the opposite. This is them trying to raid the castle. They're trying to literally hack the most valuable company in America. Many experts have written this off as this is just what spies do. But just think about the precedent that this sets. A U.S. spy agency hacking a U.S., very successful U.S. company. I'm disturbed. I really am.
Well, and the other thing is that you would hope that they wouldn't... You'd hope that in situations where they would really, really, really need it, like, let's say, we're going to use the Osama bin Laden example.
Yep.
Let's say Osama bin Laden is using an iPhone, and you know that the only way that you can find him is to get into Osama bin Laden's iPhone. Well, then you go talk to Tim Cook and say, hey, Tim, I got this problem.
Hello, Tim. How are you?
Hello, Tim.
Fantastic.
We need to get into Osama bin Laden's iPhone. And Tim goes, that's really troubling. I can't give you the keys to the castle. They go, well, okay then. Well, we either have to be given the keys to the castle or we'll break the walls down. He'll go, yeah, don't break the walls down. Here are the keys to part of the castle.
Right. Well, see, yeah, there are legal structures for that, right? You put in a request through the courts. They go, oh, it's Osama bin Laden. Oh, yes, it's very important. Not, oh, you want to collect all the metadata on everyone in the United States? To which they also went, oh, yes, that's very important. I mean, look, this court system's a Lulu. The fascinating thing is that they ever try bothering going outside the courts, given their record with the courts.
So, yeah, it's the way that this was done that really bothers me.
Yeah, it should.
Like, it would bother... So, the weird thing is, it would bother me less if Apple handed over the keys to the castle.
Yeah.
For a specific reason.
Sure.
You know, in the pursuit of X terror group...
Right.
Hacking of iPhones was a key, technology in order to...
Look, buddy, this is the U.S. public. We're real gullible. You tell us the terrorists are going to get us, and we just sort of hand over whatever rights you need. Right?
We're good at it. We have years of practice at this point.
Years of practice. Actually, honestly, we've been doing it for our entire history. Read about the Alien Sedition Acts for a second, and then understand... Look, and then understand...
Man, you're really taking it back.
What? I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong.
1797?
I don't know. Adams was president.
99.
Yeah, so go back to the Alien Sedition Acts. It's the same kind of thing where we are really good at compromising our rights for perceived security. And Glenn Greenwald makes a really good argument that it's not actual security, right? You're much more likely to die of a vending machine falling on you. But we're not out there banning vending machines. More people die in shark attacks.
We should ban vending machines. Real talk.
Real talk for a second. 330,000 people every year are going to die from heart disease. 10,000 people will die in auto accidents. Almost that many will die from the flu. And these are all things that we can either prevent or participate in every day that are going to kill more than terrorist attacks this year. Glenn Greenwald's onto something. I'm not saying national security isn't important. But perhaps compromising the security of one of your major industries, the tech industry, is not going to accomplish your long-term security. Because if you really buy in to the logic of national security, a strong economy seems to be a pretty good driver of national security. Right?
Yep.
Because then you can trade with people.
And you have, you have economic power.
Right.
So you need less military power.
Or you're China, and then you own everyone's debt, and they just go, hi! That's also a really great national security plan. Own everything. And on that note, we should probably move on to this week's last call.
You should probably own everything, I think needs to be the show title.
Yes, maybe.
So, starting in the fall, the British Broadcasting Company, better known as the BBC, will be giving small computers called the Microbit to all 11-year-olds in Britain for free.
This is so exciting.
So, in a collaboration with the likes of Samsung, Microsoft, ARM, Barclays, and the people behind Raspberry Pi machines, among the more than 25 partners, the ARM-based Microbit is supposed to be an entry-level device leading to more complicated devices later on, like Raspberry Pi itself or an Arduino. Or as my brother's professor likes to say, Texas Instruments, because, real programmers use Texas Instruments.
Yeah.
So in a quote off the BBC article announcing the Microbit, quote, "The Microbit will be a small wearable device with an LED display that children can program in a number of ways. It will be a standalone entry-level coding device that allows children to pick it up, plug it into a computer, and start creating with it immediately." End quote. So Trey, do you think a program like this is inevitable in the United States, or is it another crazy time-wasting socialist idea?
Well, I think it is only works in socialist countries.
Oh, we couldn't pull this off in the United States.
You couldn't pull it off nationwide, but I think it'd be cool for school districts to do this.
So when you think about how much a Raspberry Pi costs,
$35.
you
right?
could make that in most school districts. Like, you could do one of those per kid.
Right.
How much does a textbook cost? $160?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they're all.
And it has a 3-year life cycle?
And they're all written for Texas, which means they're full of things
Lies.
that Texans want to hear.
Damn lies.
Yeah, lies. I think in the U.S., I think we would do it around our key socialist infrastructure, school districts.
Yeah, exactly.
Our country's actually very socialist. We just don't.
And I'm going to say it, a Raspberry Pi for $40 makes way more sense than a $500 iPad.
Right. Because you can learn how to do things with it. An iPad takes away the need to learn to do things. It's just tap it, and eventually, the fish swims, or the bird hops, or the pornography plays, or whatever. And they're cheap, and you can break them, and it doesn't really matter. And
and they're modular. So you can buy specifically the Raspberry Pi. So I think that the idea that this is a intro programming hardware class is a great one for that kind of 11-year-old age bracket, because at that point most kids have had interactions with computers but have not had this kind of an interaction with a computer. There are those exceptions, yourself, where you had more interactions with the actual hardware guts of a computer than most children these days, especially. But I think that what I hope is that the BBC will make the Microbit available for as a kind of hardware go buy, so that other school districts and other nations can buy it.
Yeah.
Because it's a bunch of not British companies that they're partnering with.
You could just put out straight up Raspberry Pis with some good software.
But I like the idea that this is something that has a little screen and is a wearable thing.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the kid can wear it.
Yeah,
and
it's pretty
program
cool.
it to do something.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great idea, and I think it's a really clever use of kind of a bunch of companies getting together to do something really cool with technology.
Yeah. And on a positive note, it's time to end.
After a very negative podcast.
Very negative show. If
I
you
needed
have
an
any
upper.
feedback for us at podcast, textlesscall.com. If you are going to buy an Apple Watch edition, email me. Podcast at textlesscall.com. We
may have a business proposition for you.
I may have a business proposition for you. I'm helping you defer a small bit of your really stupid purchase. Facebook.com/textlesscall, Pinterest.com/textlesscall, or at textlesscall on the Twitters. However you find us, we'll be seeing you on the interwebs.